Okay.
Good.
All right. That looks right.
Awesome.
And we're just kind of letting people join. So Ryan, my boy Ryan. Hey Ryan.
We miss Ryan. Haven't seen for a little bit.
Okay. We've got comments coming in, so I think we are streaming. I don't know if we're going to be able to read a lot of the comments as we're going through this, but we got a few people monitoring. So if there's comments, we'll try to answer questions.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So put questions in the chat if you want us to address them. We've got a lot we're going to talk about today.
There's a lot to talk about. So, and Nathan and I really have not even coordinated this. So,
No.
So this will be spontaneous, but there is so much to talk about. And I guess, should I launch in
Yeah.
initially on an observation that I have? Because this, to me, this kind of underlies what it means to have really bad policy and what it does to people. So we're watching California burn right now,
Right.
Los Angeles County. And not only is Los Angeles County on fire, I had a website the day I pulled up and it said that they're using the inmates to help fight, prison inmates to help fight. They get $1 an hour extra if they're on emergency deployment. So they've got the inmates out helping to fight the fire. Governor Newsom is complaining about where's the federal government, why aren't they showing up, where's all the federal money that they need, as if he's not even a state, waiting on that. But a few months ago, or in the last year or so, the insurance companies started canceling wildfire policies.
Right.
And the reason they were canceling the wildfire policies is because the wildfire threat was imminent. They could see it. They had scientists. They could look and say, this is a bad situation. We can't afford to insure these homes, or we've got to raise the premiums. Well, the government, in their wisdom, came out with a mandate and said, you cannot raise your premiums. So what was their solution? Said, all right, well,
cancel.
Sayonara.
Right, right.
Yeah, we're not going to insure that risk because it's too great. So now that insurance policies cancel, the fires come, and these aren't greedy insurance companies. They measure the risk and they have their actuaries. What it is bad government policy. And I've said before that when you have a government that doesn't recognize individual rights and they don't recognize parental rights, they're probably not going to understand what it means to be a state. And the effect is that they make policies based on agendas and other things besides what makes sense, like telling insurance companies you can't raise your premiums on wildfire. And the next thing you know, you've got wildfires and people aren't covered. And we're blaming insurance companies when what we should be doing is managing those fire risks in the first place.
Yeah, and this is not a surprise that this happened. Trump was talking about it, I think, 6 years ago. He was talking about what's going on in California. You need to take measures now to clean things up and clean up your forests.
Right.
And yeah, so they could have prevented a lot of this.
There's another state that has some serious wildfire dangers. People that are building up into the forests, and it's Utah.
Right.
And it's up in the canyons. And I've been talking about this for 4 years in the legislature, that we have a serious problem. If there was, wildfire moves really, really fast. And you've got people up there in Little Cottonwood Canyon, Big Cottonwood Canyon, who they literally turn their water off during winter months.
Right, yeah, that's right.
And some of them will have a cistern that they fill up. But if there's a fire, there's no water to fight those fires. And the insurance companies have recognized the same thing in Utah that they recognized in California, which is this risk is too great to insure.
Because they have to do what's best for the businesses.
Right.
And so, yeah. So when these policies are bad, then the businesses have to take measures to protect themselves, and in turn, the citizens are.
And it's not funny, but it's almost laughable that you've got a governor who thinks, like in Governor Newsom.
Right.
We have a similar governor in
Me
Utah.
too. Yeah.
But a governor in Governor Newsom who thinks, well, no, insurance companies, you have to insure these people. You can't raise their premiums, as if he's kind of got a godlike quality to him, and that's where government really seems to
Right.
go
We're
off.
seeing those same policies in Utah. We're seeing so much, and I think it was the chair of the GOP in California they brought to Utah. I mean, we keep having a lot of these people come back and forth. We're learning from them and taking a lot of their policies here. I mean, I went to LinkedIn. I was looking at my account the other day, and I saw Spencer Cox's account, and then LinkedIn gives you at the bottom, it says, here's similar profiles. And the first one on there was Gavin Newsom. It says, if you want to look at Spencer Cox, you probably like Gavin Newsom too. So I got to lean in more. So
This way.
Yeah.
Yeah, lean towards Phil.
Okay.
So you're on the skinny screen.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay.
So yeah, you're right. So that's the problem. So there's things that we should be doing as a state now to prevent these things happening in the future.
Right.
That are
Right.
preventable.
And in my Yellow Cake Caucus that I've done the last 6 years, we talked a lot about the wildfire danger,
Uh-huh.
and the idea that we're making policies that put people's lives in danger.
Uh-huh.
And wildfire is just one of those. And when we talk about things like election and election fraud, people don't really understand that. They do understand fire.
Right.
People tend to understand fire. They understand violence. They understand big apartment buildings being taken over by Tren de Aragua
Right.
in Colorado and Denver.
Uh-huh.
They understand those things, but somehow they don't make the connection because people would not elect representatives who put policies like that in place.
Right. Yes, and then they don't realize it until it's affecting their lives, and we're seeing the effects of these policies in our schools and other places. It's really concerning. I mean, I went to I thought it was interesting. I went to a bar class a little while ago from the State Bar Association, and they were talking about how to change your name on your birth certificate and your gender. And I thought, okay, I want to catch up. What is the latest in Utah law on this issue? And they said that it's very easy, really. I mean, we're one of the easiest states to do that. So you can start, minor children can start as of age 15 and a half to request to have their name changed and their gender. So whatever gender they feel like at the time, if it's different than their biological gender, it's okay, they can change it. And our Utah policy allows them to do that. And they can print a whole new birth certificate, and it doesn't even say amended on it. And I mean, that really surprised me. I had, one of my kids, we made a change on the middle name after leaving the hospital. So we went to look at the birth certificate. It says amended, it has the old name on it. That's going to stay with us forever. But if you decide to change your gender or your name as a transgender, Utah policy just allows you to do it. So
And it doesn't say amended?
no, it doesn't say amended. So they can just wipe out that whole history. When I went to that class, I thought, what are our policies here in Utah? Do people even know that that's the kind of the laws that we're making here? And where is our focus as a state? So, but you're right. So elections have consequences, and so we saw that. We know what. When we elect these lawmakers, it's going to affect people's lives. So from the fires to schools and everything else in between. But
My microphone wants to slide on me.
yeah,
So I guess the takeaway for me is, again, the disconnect that you see from government versus the people that are dealing with the problems on the ground. So whether
Right.
you're talking about parents and their children in schools who probably have a pretty good idea what their kids are dealing with,
Right.
whereas the administration doesn't, or ranchers and water and grass and environment. You've got these bureaucrats that are making decisions that are based on something other than the problem in front of them, and usually there's money involved in it.
Right, and it's interesting, and I know this is what we're going to talk a lot about this today, but SB 54, I think, is really the root cause of a lot of this, because we saw at convention, Spencer Cox went up there, he knew he didn't have the vote, he didn't care, he wasn't trying to get the vote from the delegates, he wasn't accountable to them. And when we allow this path where people can just bypass the whole convention system, there is no accountability to the people, so they're not putting in policies that the people really want and that reflect the Utah values.
Right.
They're putting in policies that reflects the donors and the lobbyists and the people who paid the hundreds of thousands of dollars for them to collect those signatures. And so I think that's one of the reasons why we are in this fight so strong, is that we've got to have a system where our legislators are more accountable to the people. They're more representative of the people and the policies that we want, because they went through the system where they are accountable to the people and not accountable to the lobbyists. And so we've got to clean up our election system.
And it's interesting being a legislator. I'm in a legislature. By the way, Natalie Clausen and Phil Lyman Natalie's an attorney, so that's why she was going to the bar meeting.
Yes, right.
Anyway, I'm in the legislature, or have been up until
Mhm.
whenever the final day is. I'm not even sure. But legislators can see the writing on the wall. I don't think that legislators are necessarily out there trying to cheat
Uh-huh.
in their election, but they can see, like in this election, they can see that the governor is above the law when it comes to elections. He doesn't have to get his signatures. He doesn't have to win a convention. He doesn't have to win the primary. He just makes the laws. The judges bow to him. And so legislators, even though they may not be in favor of cheating on elections, they are going to support the person who clearly is going to win,
Right.
because he's got a huge unfair advantage. So it's like going into the boxing ring with both hands tied behind your back,
Uh-huh.
and people placing bets and saying, "Oh, I'm betting on the governor because he's got,"
Yes.
and that's honestly the kind of the effect of SB 54 on
Right.
otherwise people of,
Uh-huh.
without the motive to cheat. They do know that there is cheating, and they know that people that are in favor with the powers that be, with the establishment or the syndicate, as I call them,
Uh-huh.
have a better chance of being the governor than somebody coming out of the woodwork like you and I.
Right, yeah. When that legislative audit came out, that was a couple weeks before the general election. I talked to one person and I said, well, what are they going to do about it? It shows that he was short on signatures. What are they going to do? And she's like, you know what? Nobody wants to stand up because they know who counts their ballots.
Right.
And so that's exactly who. And so there's problems all around. But it's been good, this battle that we are in, because we've exposed it like none other. And you've been in this election fight for years, and you've tried to pass bills and to clean things up. But I think people see it now, and they know how, because it's just so obvious out there. So now that it's so exposed, we feel like we got to clean it up. It's got to be better than this.
So not to divert, but we were on a podcast
Uh-huh.
a week or two ago. I think it was before Christmas, and it was with Sally. Hey, Sally.
Yeah.
And it was great. And one of the co-hosts got on and really berated us, berated me specifically, kind of like, you're being a wimp. What do they have on you? Why aren't you fighting? And I was really taken back.
I remember that.
And I kind of came back at him. But honestly, afterwards, thinking about that, was it Matt? Anyway.
Jem or something.
Jem.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jem. Thinking about that afterwards, I thought, he's not wrong. A person in this situation who knows what's going on, has seen it, has first row seat to this, and then we get on and talk about it calmly and coolly.
You're right.
And I thought, maybe he's not wrong. Maybe.
He did want boldness. He wanted us to call it out and say what
so
it
I
is.
appreciate that.
Yeah, and I thought, have you seen Phil's X account? Like, he doesn't back away from some of these topics.
So you go and it's like, well, yeah, you don't know the fights that we've fought, the money that we've spent on attorneys, all of these things, and yet, and this is the dilemma that I've had as a legislator, is like, oh, I voted no on all these bills, sometimes the only one, but there's not much. That's not a victory. You don't win by being the one that was informed. You win by being able to inform everybody else to such an extent that they see it and that they will change. And I guess where I'm going with that is, I think there is a fundamental change in people happening right now, that they're not going to take it anymore.
Right.
They really are not going to put up with this for very much longer. So you see this.
I think you're right. I've had people say, like, "Are you guys? How's your supporters?" I'm like, our support is growing. Like, our social media accounts are growing. Like, with comments, people. I think you're exactly right. People have seen it, and they were harmed by it too. They were harmed by the election results. They went out there. They did the effort. And they could see how the system is so skewed against them and against these, like, against the guys going into part. But people, they don't want to take it anymore, and they want some change.
Yeah, my big beef has always been with environmentalists, and I don't mean people who love the environment. I mean people who are like communists with the religion of the environment, to use as a weapon against everybody else. And that green group is
Yeah.
they're being discredited, and they're losing because the money, because nobody pushes those agendas
Uh-huh.
unless there's money that backs them up, and there's been huge money that's backing them up, and I think that money is going to start to dry up, and I think the lobbyists and the people that are pushing that are going to stop pushing it. I think that whole thing's going to collapse. I think the whole Green New Deal, Paris Climate Accord, United Nations, World Economic
Yeah.
Forum, eat bugs, all this stuff.
Yeah.
I really think it's going to
Why? Why do you
collapse.
think it's going to collapse?
Because the money, I think, is going to dry up. Trump
Yeah.
Trump is probably the biggest factor there, and he's coming out and saying, let's talk about the truth. RFK is talking about, let's talk about
Right.
the truth about what's going on with our
Uh-huh.
food instead of listening to the lobby. So I mean, I hope that the money starts to leave the
Uh-huh.
propaganda machine, and it kind of collapses under its own weight.
Yeah, that would be great, because we saw that period of time when you couldn't even talk about these things or question these different topics, and now people realize we have been played on so many of these levels and so many of these things. I mean, ever since COVID, I think that was really woke a lot of people up, and it's good to see the tide turning. Even with Mark Zuckerberg, what he said the other day, like who knows how legit or how much he really believes that, about trying to clean up and not have censorship on Facebook. Like we want to see it. But at least for him to say that out loud and admit there was censorship and the government is the one who encouraged it.
Well, the FBI had Facebook under their thumb,
Right? Yeah.
and maybe he's genuine. Maybe he's feeling like they've lifted that a little bit.
Yeah, and at least that he's talking about it now, and so that's good. And so I think things like that, being able to have the conversations, then it opens our eyes to those whole problems with the Green New Deal and other things like that, and hopefully get better policy.
So I guess what I'm trying to do is frame this discussion, because we really are talking about SB 54 and our lawsuits and things, but to frame it, I think whether I'm doing a good job or not, and Natalie does a fantastic job with this, but really to put it into context, like why is it important? Why is it important to have people that can elect representatives
Yeah.
versus kind of the establishment, kind of this top-down establishment, money-driven thing. And the reason, it's not just because it's corrupt, it's because that corruption leads to really bad policies.
Right.
It hurts families, it hurts communities, especially small communities that don't have the voice that others have, in the legislature. That becomes a more and more urbanized. It's like Hunger Games. Literally, it's
Right.
like Hunger Games. And so the capital city tends to get more and more, and they
Right,
get more
we're
and more
seeing
money,
that
and
in
they take
Utah.
more and more money.
Yeah.
And we are seeing it.
Uh-huh.
$1 billion for a stadium is pocket change to the state.
Uh-huh. And you saw that, how this has affected people's lives in Blanding and other places, the bad policy.
Yeah, especially environmental stuff, when they come and say, "Hey, the cows are destroying the environment." And the truth is, the cows are saving the environment. And there's good studies that say if you want to save your forest, increase grazing, bring in the cows, bring in the deer herds, and have more grazing that's going on, not less.
Right. Yeah.
And as a county commissioner in San Juan County, I was very close to the Navajo Nation and grew up there. And in 1932, John Collier, under the Indian New Deal, came in and he observed, with all of these sheep that the Navajos have, and that was their wealth. They didn't have money. They didn't. That's how you counted their wealth, was their cattle, their sheep, their cattle. And he observed these cattle are destroying. They're going to turn this lush, beautiful green area into a desert if I, John Collier, don't do something about it. So they reduced the herds by 80%, and the desertification went through the roof.
Really?
Yeah, the plains started to turn into a desert because the sheep weren't grazing. They weren't tilling up the ground. They weren't fertilizing. They weren't turning that over.
Yeah.
And so it's, sorry, too little, too late. Well, the Navajos knew what it took, because they've been doing it for 900 years.
Right. Yeah.
Funny how that works.
Yeah. Right.
They knew what it took. They weren't destroying their own backyard, but John Collier came in with his.
It's these new ideas that are that people are bringing in. They're saying we need to change all this, and we're like, this has been working forever. This is how things should go.
I was reading about him, and it says, I can't remember where he's from. I think he went to school in Oxford or something. He visited Taos, and he was so taken by the native people that he decided his life's mission was to save them from themselves. And this is what
Right.
he did. He destroyed the reservation.
Wow. Interesting. These unintended effects. Well, or maybe intended. I don't know. But
Intended by somebody behind it that's inspiring those ideas.
Right.
Whether it's
because a lot of these are not natural ideas.
and I'm thinking of Corinthians. It's not flesh and blood. It's principalities and powers of darkness, and it clouds people's mind, and they make bad decisions, and they think they're so smart, and next thing you know, you've got poverty and
because
dependence.
that force is against families and other things like that, and that's what we're seeing. These policies are really against these Utah values that we've had, and weakening families, and we can see it kind of a common theme. So I think you're right.
There was something that came out in the UN papers saying that families were a threat to their agenda. Tight-knit communities, families, those things were a threat to the United Nations agenda.
And you said that in a podcast the other day. That's why they really focus on these conservative states.
Yeah. And I said it's not that the left thinks that your property is their property. They think your children are their property.
Right.
And they want to control. I don't know.
Yeah, we're seeing that. Well, as we were talking earlier, I keep thinking I saw this shirt that said, "Fed up, go vote." And I think there's a lot of people that if we get frustrated with things, that's what we're taught as Americans. You get frustrated with systems and policies, then go vote and make a change. And that's, I think, kind of back to where we keep going with this, is if we do want to see better policy and protecting our children and other things like that, we need to get better leaders, and we should be able to vote. But if we can't trust our vote, then we've got big problems, and I think that's where we're at. So we've got to start right there, clean that up.
Yeah, I was talking with the speaker, and he said, "Well, if we don't like what's happening, we just need to elect different people." I said, "Can we elect different people? Can we elect a new governor?
Yeah.
Can we do that?" It's a
great
legitimate question.
It's a great question, right?
Sophie had shared something. I don't know if you saw this on Technology, man.
Yeah.
This and sorry, Leighton, if you look this up, it's exclusive. Google suddenly demands FirstNet article be taken down a year and a half after it was posted, and FirstNet is Verizon's communication system that is for the emergency services, and it's also takes care of all the communications during an election time. And Sophie, one of the red pills, she really is the person who put this together, discovered this with FirstNet, and it goes deep. And Joe Hoft, Gateway Pundit, picked it up and did the article a year and a half ago. And now Google has just come out and demanded that article be taken down everywhere.
So she discovered how it was being used for elections, that whole FirstNet system.
Yeah, the FirstNet system.
Yeah.
For stealing elections.
Yeah. So now they want to take it down. Let's not talk about that anymore.
Why are we... Anyway,
Interesting.
why are we taking that down?
So censorship's still going on.
Yeah.
We're still seeing that. It's interesting. I'm just looking at we've got some questions coming in. I saw Steve Christiansen wanted to know. We wanted to know what's going on tomorrow too. Steve Christiansen was asking about that. So
hey, Steve. All right, so we'll dive into this. We've got a case. It's at the Supreme Court, and it's a question that goes to the judges, and they have a conference twice a week, Wednesdays and Fridays. Friday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, they'll go into conference to talk about a few things that are on the docket. One of them is our question, which is, does a political party have the right to choose their candidates free from interference from the state legislatures, I should say. And they've answered that question before in Lopez Torres versus the New York Board of Education. And essentially, the decision that they made in that was that, yes, political parties can choose their candidates, even if they're choosing people that are, insiders to the party. If they wanted to use a dance-off contest to choose their candidate, they have the right to do that.
Right.
And it was really explicit in Lopez Torres that the legislatures can't override the right of association. So it's an important question.
And it's a constitutional right, the right of association, First
Right,
Amendment
right.
protected, and it's really important. And I was thinking, like, I compared it to a religious organization. How would you feel if the state could come into a religious organization and say, we would like to help you choose your leaders, and we've created a process that people get signatures and they can apply and be a leader of this organization.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't ring right. It's not okay. Like, the state should not be able to come inside of an organization, a political party in this case, and to interfere with the internal proceedings.
So I went back. I went and watched all of the floor debate, all of the committee debate on SB 54, and it was really interesting. But probably the biggest part of that was troubling to me was the Senate floor debate, and all of those people standing up and saying, "I am voting for SB 54 because the petition that's being brought to us by Count My Vote, Keep My Vote, Count My Vote."
I think it was Count My Vote.
Count My Vote goes too far. So we're gonna do almost what they wanted, but not quite but as legislators. So they were afraid of citizens who had a petition. The petition had already been gutted. It had already gotten rid of the jungle primary language that was in that petition. And I think as I'm watching that, I'm looking at it saying, this is not to circumvent Count My Vote. This is to make sure that Count My Vote gets exactly what they wanted without having to go through the petition, because the petition might not make it through. So those senators, and as I listened to Todd Weiler and company explain their logic as to why they're going to vote for SB 54, every one of them said, I don't like the language in the petition. I'm voting for SB 54, which basically was the language in the petition.
Wow. So they used that as an excuse for why they did SB 54 when it was actually what they were doing.
I think it was what do you call that?
Like a scapegoat almost?
A scapegoat, yeah. False logic for sure.
Yeah.
Setting up this fear that is illegitimate and saying, oh, we have to do this.
And after watching all of those, do you think that this is the intent of how that they're using it now? I mean, how the 60% and all that wasn't the intent at the beginning, right? Like, do you think that they've kind of changed around what they, or at least how they presented it to people, what SB 54 would do?
I don't have it right in front of me here, but we did a post this morning on some of the language that came from Trent Stagg's amicus brief, and I really liked the language there, and I think you had pulled that out, that the intent was really to change the character, the quality of the people that we put up for office.
Yeah, I think a lot of that language came from Justice Timkovich in his dissent.
Oh yes.
So I don't know if you. I think I can pull it up. It might take a second.
But yeah, to fundamentally change the quality of the candidates that are running for office under the guise of a simple administrative change.
Right.
And if you've been in the legislature, you know that is the name of the game. Oh, this is a good bill. It doesn't really do much, just a few little fixes, and then you find out, oh my word, what did we just pass? We passed a bill that gives the health department the right to take over our lives at the drop of a hat.
Right.
And you don't typically know that that's going on until it starts happening. And then they go back and say, well, you're the ones that voted for this in. So.
Right, yeah, I think this is the language. It says, this is Justice Timkovich, his dissenting opinion for the Utah Republican Party v. Cox. When this was argued before, issues were different then, but it says that Utah's 2014 election law reforms purposely try to change the substantive type of candidate the party nominates. It's exactly what happened. Yeah. They purposely are trying to change the type of candidates. You look at, look at the Senate race. The delegates and the GOP rejected John Curtis by big margins.
Right.
And not because that was not the type of candidate they wanted. But then he was able to get through it because of the SB 54. And it says, so to continue with this thing, he says, so it changes the type of candidate they nominate, all the while masquerading as a mere procedural reform. So it's much more than just a procedural reform. It's like changing our party. Changing the party. Right.
They want moderate candidates, and this is a way they're going to make sure they get those.
Right. So it's a problem. The court has seen that in the past. It's a problem, and so, yeah, that's why we're doing this, right? Is to try to protect the party and to protect our values in Utah.
What was Steve's question?
Well, he wanted to know what was happening tomorrow.
Okay.
So
So the conference.
And we don't know exactly what will come from that. They could have a lot of options because they could decide the law and say, decide in our favor about the law, but then remand it down to a different court to have them apply our facts to this legal standard. So that could happen, or they could answer it there. They could come back and ask for Spencer Cox or others to submit more briefs or brief about it. But so it'll be interesting to see what happens.
The only thing that would be a remedy
Mm-hmm.
to this would be to acknowledge that the primary runoff election was a fraudulent runoff election. It should never have happened.
Right.
There should not have been a runoff at part of the primary. And this is also important. The convention is part of the primary process. Mm-hmm. You go into the convention, and if you have a tie coming out of convention, then you have a runoff to wrap up the primary. If you don't have a tie coming out of convention, if you have a clear winner, then there's not a need for a primary.
Right.
If you have a primary and people have gathered signatures, then they're able to participate in the primary.
Uh-huh.
They're not able to force a primary on someone who got over 60%. And all of this has been like coming to light, and it hasn't happened before, at least in the governor's race. I don't think it's happened before with any race that a person who failed to get above 40% was able to force a person who got above 60% into a primary.
Right.
And it absolutely has never happened with a governor's race. There's never been a governor who failed to get above 40% in convention till this last year.
Right. This is a big year. And that's straight from our party platform, too. It says that the 60%. And Spencer Cox knew that, too. He spoke about that at UVU. We all saw that clip going around.
And the law doesn't contradict that.
No,
the law, SB 54 doesn't say you can force somebody into a primary. It doesn't say that.
Right.
It says you can qualify for a primary. It doesn't mean that I have to go and do a primary, or that we have to go and do a primary. So the Supreme Court could say that. They could look at that and say that primary is nonsense. Redo the general election with Lyman Clausen as the Republican nominees, which is what the Republican Party chose.
Exactly.
Simply.
So that's what we're asking for. That's what we think. That's what should happen tomorrow. So we'll see what happens.
One of the attorneys that has been advising us said that they wouldn't be surprised if there was a decision by tomorrow afternoon.
That's great.
And the decision could be, we're not going to touch it. But the decision could also be, this primary runoff election was a fraud and is null and void.
Right.
Go back and do the general election again. Do it the right way.
Yeah. That's right. That's good. So we're glad to be in the Supreme Court with it. It was good because you brought the issue up last summer, the summer right after the primary, brought it up to the state Utah Supreme Court. Yeah. And so we're able to appeal it up to the Utah Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So
every time I look over at I see a bunch of questions, but I'm not able to read them as they're coming up. If you got any, Jody?
No, there's some arguments with Chad Iverson on.
Oh, good.
So thank you for your comments and questions and everything. We, I think sometimes they don't save once we upload it, so you can come back and put more
so we can
comments
go back
on it. Yeah, or people need to come back and put comments because we won't see them. We have the third district court case too. We can talk about that.
Let's talk about that.
Okay. A lot of people saw that. We posted a video about it yesterday, and going back to the question of, do people care what's going on? They do. We posted that video last night about the results of this motion to dismiss, and we've had over 50,000 views on it in just the last 24 hours. It's a lot of views.
That's a lot
so
of views.
People are paying attention big time. And I mean, if you compare that to other political posts going on in Utah, there's not a lot of traction. Even the newspapers don't get a lot of traction on X and other things, but to get that many views on a political post is a big deal. So people care, it's affecting their lives, and they're watching this.
That, not to divert a little bit, but
please.
People ask all the time, what can we do to help? And honestly, in this age of influence and social media, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and X, and join our YouTube channel. It honestly, it starts to build awareness,
Yeah.
and the algorithms work. And if you want to get your message out, you've got to enter into that space. And so we're doing that, and we do get a lot of people that are paying attention, not because we're super interesting, but because we're telling the truth. I always say the one thing we do have going for us is that we're right.
Right. That's right. It's a good
So-
thing. And we're telling the truth about it.
We're
Yeah.
telling the truth about it. We're not trying to
We're
push
just trying to uncover
pull
all
the
these
wool
things.
over anybody's
Yeah, yeah.
eyes. And I guess we got our friend Chad on here, and he, people like that get on here and throw such nonsense
Yeah.
around, such baloney.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, we're not trying to deceive anybody. We are trying to figure things out. This was, I mean, when the Lymans were
Yeah.
on the ballot, and I'm talking to the media, and they're saying, well, do you have proof? And I said, look, I don't have any tools. I'm not an investigative reporter. I sent you the information that we got that shows this. I'm like in a dark room, feeling around, trying to find what I can find, and you've got all the tools, and you won't do anything.
Yeah, and we're the candidates.
And we're the
they're-
candidates.
And people are saying, did you guys do this? Did you sue about this? Did you do this? Right? No, this is like, why do we have the burden to do to be the media and to
Right.
be the law enforcement, to do everything else? Like, we need to have clean elections, everyone do their job, but right now they're all just protecting.
I knew
this
on
and
that Lyman thing, after we'd gone for about a week
Yeah.
waiting for the media to do something, I knew what the story was going to be. And it's that Lyman makes false allegations against Cox or something. It's like, okay.
Yeah, because we tried. We talked to a lot of media about it. We waited for them to talk about to cover the story. They didn't.
What was the judge on the Lyman's case?
Well, we're still in that.
Was that Nielsen?
No, Stephen Nelson was for our third
No,
district.
that was that
Yeah, I
woman.
can't
I can't
remember.
remember her name. She was well spoken.
It's a question from Facebook. the
Okay.
judge.
Yeah, we'll have to
I can't remember her name.
I
But,
can't either. But we're still in that case too.
Yes, we're still in that case.
Our last hearing was Christmas Eve.
That's open. The Lyman's dropped out as part of a settlement, but also part of the settlement was that they would still be deposed. And as we said then, we're not going after the Lymans. There was no personal animosity towards Richard and Carol Lyman, but we did want to know, were they induced?
Right.
Because that's illegal.
Uh-huh.
And if so, was it from the Cox campaign? And we believe it was.
And their attorney is fighting really hard from letting any of that information be found out. So they did a motion to dismiss. Their attorney, I mean, can I say he works at the Capitol? He's a
he's
lobbyist.
at the Capitol all the
so
time.
They've got
and-
connections there. But yeah, so that's a story that needs to be told.
Okay, so back to our third district court case. The lieutenant governor made a motion to dismiss.
Yes.
And what was the judge's, Stephen Nielsen's decision?
He granted it, so
Of
he
course.
threw it out. But
We'd like not to talk about this.
yeah.
We'd like not to talk about this too. So.
So I was shocked. Like when I was reading through the order, I'm like, where did he get that from? Where did that argument? Because he omitted things, they added things, and it was just the whole argument. I just thought was pretty crazy. So I went into that on my video a little bit, but it actually is a good thing that it got dismissed because it just speeds up this whole process.
Right.
So we weren't really expecting that it was going to go our way, but we were able to. Now we can appeal it. Right?
You know, that's I guess, and maybe somebody in the courts understands that. It's like, hey, we could hear this, but it's going to cost everybody a bunch of money, and I already know I'm not going to decide this because I'm appointed by Cox, and things are not going to go well for me. Let's just cut to the chase. You can appeal it.
Dismiss it, right? So
maybe it's a
I think
favor?
so. It saved us time. It saved us money. So we didn't have to argue the whole case. We didn't even get to present all the information. They just ruled against us. And this is the thing I can't figure out. One of them is this whole process. So we go in to try to get the signatures, and we ask for them, and they say this document's protected. You can't have the private names. And then we say why, and because the state code says if it's private, candidates can view this document. They just don't see that in the code. Like the lieutenant governor doesn't address it. It doesn't even register. They don't argue against it. They don't explain why it's not applicable. So the lieutenant governor has totally ignored that part of the code. They will cite the other parts of the code and then leave that out. So lieutenant governor didn't address it. Chief administrative officer, when we appealed it, didn't address it, didn't come up. And then even this court hearing, they put in there the code, and it had the parts of it that talks about the private signatures, and then it says ... Well, those ... say unless you're a candidate. they didn't include it. So I just blows my mind. So someone tell us why it and then the court went so far as to say we tried to infer the intent of the legislature and find out and we decided that you can't view this. Well, their intent is clear. They intended that candidates could see it. They specifically put that in code, and they also put it on every single form that someone marks the box. They want to be private. It says, except candidates can view this information. So the intent is clear, and I just can't figure out how they can keep getting by without even explaining that.
Well, and the idea that you sign a petition and believe that your signature is going to be withheld and private it just flies in the face of,
Right.
of that. If I were a judge and I saw that an attorney had written a brief that left out that, to me that's the color of law. That's where you say, not only are you trying to push something through inappropriately, you're trying to fool
Right.
me, a judge, and I don't like that. And I would respond accordingly.
Oh, you should, yeah. And
But
there should be ethical concerns on that. I just can't understand. Someone tell us why it doesn't apply. I mean, are we not candidates? Are you like? I don't know why they can keep getting away with
Well,
this.
and I heard, and I need to dig into this a little bit, but I heard that in the code that talks about the various types of petitions,
Right.
that there's a few legislators that saying, oh well, it should have included nominating petitions. It didn't, so let's fix that so that the nominating petitions, that you can't look at those signatures.
Oh, right.
Because right now the code does not say in a nominating petition that you can't view
No.
the signature.
Does not say that in code.
Well, and clearly it wasn't interpreted that way at any point until we asked for Spencer Cox's
Right.
signature.
Otherwise, what happens to Lieutenant Governor's office for showing the petitions of other candidates?
Right.
Like, what's a recourse if it was so bad and so against the law? Why did you do it before?
Yeah.
And what's going to happen to you now?
And we knew. I mean, when the opposition started to come up, irrational opposition, and you can get I won't use his name again. You can get these people on there that are spouting just complete nonsense.
Yeah.
But from a CPA standpoint, from my standpoint, I'm looking at there's a reason why someone will go to such great lengths to make sure you can't look at the record, and that's because they know if you do, you're going to find something that's incriminating to them.
Right.
And that's absolutely. I mean, I know that when we named John Curtis and Derek Brown. See, turn up the. Okay, I think we'll just have to talk a little louder into the mic. When we named John Curtis and Derek Brown on the people that we wanted to see their signatures as well, that's what prompted them to say, you can look at our signatures. We want it audited. We want to shut Phil Lyman and Natalie Clausen up. We want these guys to stop talking about this. Let's just do an audit, and a legislative audit. And it's funny because the state auditor, John Dougal, I think kind of saw the writing on the wall and thought, well, I'm going to jump out in front of this and I'll do an audit. And I don't know if it was to, find out the problems or to run some interference on the front end of it. I really don't know. But it backfired on him because the audit that they thought would shut us up said exactly what we were saying, is he didn't have his signatures.
Right. Because we just wanted to look at them, and then they're hiding them from us, and so it just keeps raising more questions. And what they say, if there's smoke, there's fire, and it's just starting to confirm a lot of the suspicions that we had this whole time. And we found out, Michael Clara has been digging into things, and he asks great questions. He gets some really good.
He's a true investigator.
He's amazing, yeah. And the questions he comes up with are great, and he's just all about. He just wants fairness, and we didn't know him. We kind of mentioned before, we didn't know him before, and he just jumped in, wanted to see, want to make sure things are fair. Anyway, he looked at the number of, when you turn in your packets, to start, there's a race for a candidate to turn in the packets, because the first one who turns it in, they get the benefit of, they go through the analysis for them, and so the subsequent ones, they get counted. If someone signs for two different candidates in the same race, it only gets counted for the first one who turned in. So
duplicates
are
not a problem for the first one.
Exactly, yeah. And that means a lot, because there's only a certain number of people who will actually sign these signature packets, and there's in the state. So anyway, he goes in and he looks about the number that was submitted by Spencer Cox, and on February 20th, the packets were submitted. You're not supposed to submit them unless you had like the full set, and to get over the 28,000, and then you can supplement it later. And then and because that was the day that Cox tweeted, I got my signatures and everything. Well, turns out on the day that he said he turned in his 28,000, that it appears that he was even short on that day. So they turned in 717 packets. You total the number of signatures in those, you're at 27,000. So they just kind of rounded up to give him that 28,000. So even from the get-go, they didn't have the signatures. So,
right off the bat.
Yeah. So there's that. Then there's all these questions of the where all these packets are that went to Attorney General's office. It's such a messy thing that we're dealing with.
And it's one thing after another. 16 strikes in a row, and you're still at bat, and you're going, how does this work? Do you not have to follow the same rules?
Yes, because we did see things change over time with like some of the candidates and how they were treated differently, and there needs to be the rule of law in Utah, and everybody follows the rule of law, and no one is above it.
Right.
And I think that is what we're seeing is a problem here.
And the code is really convoluted, and it's really designed for litigation language.
Yeah.
A lot of it is, and so you get in there, and then we get just criticized excessively for questioning some of these things, and then you get judges who will play along with that. Thinking of the Supreme Court, the Utah Supreme Court, when I filed that case, they didn't come back with, it was an unfriendly response. It was like, which again was a blessing to us, and maybe they were giving us a favor, saying, no, don't waste your time with the Utah Supreme Court. We are going to rule against you. We'll just do it now, and then off to the U.S. Supreme Court we go. But the whole response was just, from other people, from legislators. It's like, give us the courtesy of allowing us to ask a rational question, a reasonable question, and expect to get a rational and a reasonable answer. Right.
And the same with these signature packets. Just let us view them, or just give us a full list, or give us what we're entitled to. And that's where you get concerned. We did a podcast too with Utah County GOP.
Oh yeah.
And
great.
Yeah, it was really good. And I thought, so Christine Henshaw, who's a county chair in Utah County, had a good question where she said, it would be interesting to know how much money SB 54 has cost the state of Utah. And it's got to be a lot of money, from the signature verification, the time that it takes. That's a lot of signatures. And they centralized it all in Davis County. That's 300,000 signatures for these clerks. They had to hire temp workers to do it because they couldn't, their own employees couldn't handle this load. So it's expensive. Like the machines that they had to buy, plus the litigation. And
that's for the official side, for the government side of it. The amount of money that candidates are spending, huge amounts of money.
Right, hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, millions. And John Curtis is what, 13 million? I think was.
I think that's how much he put in the primary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
But I think it was like maybe 400,000 or so for the signature.
For the signature. I wonder if the people who run these campaigns might also have ties to the signature gathering companies. That would surely be unethical.
Right.
I can't imagine that would happen.
No.
Matt Lusty. So.
Yeah, right. So we're seeing kind of this circular thing that.
So you've got these. I mean, I am being facetious because you've got the people who own the signature gathering company are the ones who also run the campaigns, are the ones who were big pushers for the Count My Vote and the initiative.
Right.
So if you and I wanted to start a business of really bilking millions and millions and millions of dollars out of the Utah political scene, we'd say, well, the convention system, we can't make money on that.
Uh-huh.
That's just
Right. Uh-huh.
neighborhood caucuses talking to each other and going and making rational, reasonable decisions free from the influence of money.
Right.
How does a person start a business in that environment? But you throw in SB 54 and all of a sudden you've got going concern, a great business model.
Yeah, big money maker. And it's making our whole elections cost so much more money too. Running these primary elections.
And we end up with
It's more moderate candidates. Yeah.
It does favor moderate candidates.
Mm-hmm.
So you ready for a question?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody wants to tune in tomorrow, so where can they watch you live to know what's going on?
We don't know. The whole thing is private. You can't tune into the Supreme Court stuff, and then when they're done, I don't know if they just issue that in a bulletin.
They want to watch you guys though.
Yeah. I guess
We could weigh in on it after we know.
when
but
we
I-
know, but
yeah.
it may not be tomorrow. It may.
Okay.
I guess we could weigh in tomorrow and say that we don't know anything.
Yeah.
The other
Um,
question is a little bit. It's an attorney question.
It's a great question, by the way. I just don't know
Mhm.
quite where that goes.
Okay. Why has the SCOTUS case argued associational rights instead of representational rights? This is Truth from Earth. He says, I understand it's fashionable, but associational arguments would be moot if parties were not held as special power. Is that what they argued on the case?
Well, this is really right now. Our question is it's a right of association question, and I mean I could read it. Should I read the question that we put? It is like Phil said. I mean it is actually a single question.
That is, I mean, that's an interesting question. Representational rights.
Instead of
I guess
association.
would say that that people have a right to elect their representatives, which I think that's a great point. But it's not the question that was asked and answered
Mhm.
already with Lopez Torres, which was right of association. But
We feel like because they've already addressed that in that case that it should be that this is our strong argument. But
they are very related, because I mean that's what we're saying is because if you don't have the right of association, then you really don't have a Republican form of government where representatives are chosen by in a representative form. So,
Right, you are.
Right.
but that's a good point.
It is a good point. I think we brought that up in our brief too. I don't know how quickly I can find it, but it just how delegates feel like they're how we just lose our whole sense of our whole reason. Yeah, whatever.
I will say, we were hoping to do this with a kind of a live group, but we just couldn't get everything put together. And that's one of the nice things about having 100 people in attendance. Is usually somebody there that has maybe got some insight on that.
No,
It's a really good question.
Yeah, but it does violate our right to represent. If our vote
I think.
and you do all the vetting and then you go to convention and then your vote doesn't matter anymore. So you did lose that right.
Right.
To do that. But the right of association has been applied to. It's not specifically written in the First Amendment, but in the 50s and it was an NAACP case when they were looking at the membership of them and they were trying to make them disclose their membership. Then they argued and the court ruled that the First Amendment implies that there is a right of association. So I think that's probably because it is a constitutional right. That's why it's a strong case for us.
Those really are very closely connected. I don't know that you can have one without the other. I don't know that you could have representational integrity without right of association.
Yeah.
So maybe the right of association is a little bit more at the root. Of
Yeah.
that, but-
Here's language from our question too, which our question is 700 pages long. So it is a single question, but there's a lot of case law in it and a lot of supporting evidence. But one section says that the Republican Party's internal nominee selection process has impacted our political party's ability to define itself. And candidates can evade the scrutiny of the delegates chosen at the party caucus ignoring the caucus system altogether. This new procedure reshapes the party from this close-knit community that thoughtfully selects candidates to a more loosely connected assembly of individuals who simply cast their votes on Tuesday in June. So, yeah, they are very closely connected, and it does really hurt our
It's really good.
representation.
Really good language.
Yeah, it is. It is. This is really well written. Do we have other questions that came up?
Yeah, people are asking, they said our caucus this year meant nothing. How do we fix this?
So our caucus system meant nothing, they said. And how do we fix this?
Yeah. I struggle with that narrative because our caucus system worked this year.
Yeah.
It worked so perfectly, and yet you've got a governor and a lieutenant governor who decided they were going to break it,
Right.
and do something different. So people would like to say this is why the caucus system is so weak. No, it's under attack, and it needs people to defend it.
Right.
And especially the delegates that were there should be standing up. And this was honestly the most frustrating part about this lawsuit with the Supreme Court is we wanted the GOP to be a plaintiff with us.
Right.
We wanted them on. They can't be neutral. They've got to be named. They've either got to be a plaintiff saying we want this fixed, but if they're not willing to do that, then they've got to be a defendant because they are integral to fixing the problem.
Yeah, because we need to compel action, so they have to be a party to it.
So, so you go to convention, and people show up there 5 a.m. and they're there till 1
From the
o'clock
whole
in the
state,
morning.
they have to travel there.
Traveling and such commitment, such dedication, and it is fun.
Yeah.
I know it's grueling and I know it's hard, and maybe that's the wrong word to use, but it's certainly inspiring, I guess, to see the level of commitment, and especially by the end of the evening, what you've got there are people who they would stay for 4 days if it took it, because they are just not gonna throw in the towel on this, and I guess that's people should not throw in the towel on the convention, especially this last one. I think it shows that the convention works,
Right.
and
I had a great time there. We were with a group of delegates who started singing "God Bless America" in the middle of it as we waited for the next phase of voting. But we thought it was great. I was there as a delegate at the time, so I wasn't on your ticket. And but I thought it was interesting because we had time to kind of check our phones, and I was watching as there were people around us who were elected politicians who were writing some really critical things about the convention during it. And I remember I had a conversation with one of them. I said, looking at your Twitter feed, it sounds like this is horrible, but look around, like these are really awesome people who are here. And she's like, oh, I see that. So she deleted something, and so I appreciate her doing that. But I do feel like there was kind of a coordinated effort prior to convention to try to put a negative spin on it, because I think that they knew they weren't going to get out of it what they wanted to.
Well, and I guess that's the other part of this that has really become more black and white to me is people want to push the narrative that it's a bunch of right-wing extremists, that the convention doesn't work, and then they make the accusation, and then they go to all kinds of effort to show how right they are. And by the time you're done, you've got people that are just slinging mud right and left, and making accusations against anybody that defends the caucus, as knuckle draggers or whatever they want to do. It's just nonsense pushed by people who clearly want to get rid of the convention. There's another group of people that I worry about with the convention, and it is the political minded people, because they know that the people like the convention, so they get out and say, I'm going to save the convention. We want the convention. I'm a convention person. Yeah. But I'm not going to stand up now because for whatever reason. And that's if you want to stand up for the convention, the time to do it is right now for the 2024 election. Right. And you say, we'll do it next time. Boy, wait till you see me stand up for convention next go around. Boy, you're going to really be impressed with me. And so just make sure you keep me in office until then, no matter what it takes. So yeah, some real disingenuous, politically motivated actions that really frustrate me.
Right. because I think some people feel a little bit used through that process because they went to the convention, they vetted the delegates, and they voted there, but then they saw that their candidates, there's so many concerns about if they're with even the primary election, we can't look at cast vote records, and we can't look into see if the convention winners, if they got the votes. I mean, so it just feels like, so the convention matters, but then it matters, like you're saying, after the fact. Like it matters that we've got to be able to not just get someone past convention, they have to be able to get on, they have to win office, unless, or you have so many hurdles along the way for these convention winners.
Okay, so here's the question.
Okay.
What do we do?
Yeah.
The conservatives,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of conservatives, and the moderates are wanting to take the wind out of the sails of the conservatives
right,
and get them
right.
to say, "Oh, I'm not even going to participate in convention. It's not even worth my time."
Uh-huh.
That's a win for
Exactly.
the moderates.
Right.
So if we wanted to win this, maybe the conservatives band together and say, we are going to demand changes, we're going to make changes, we're going to go to our caucus meetings, we're going to elect precinct leaders who share our principles, we're going to elect county party chairs
Mhm.
that are conservative and that will stand up for this. We're going to elect state officers
Uh-huh.
who will fight
Right.
instead of roll over. And that's the other alternative,
That's
right?
what, yes, I think that is our best alternative. That's what we've got to do. We can't,
Yeah.
because we don't want to, we don't want to give up. And that's how we do it, is we've got to stay engaged in the party. I think you're right.
Yeah, I've said recently, I quote the Borg in Star Trek, to
Yeah.
Captain Picard, resistance is futile, you will be assimilated.
Yeah.
Well, Captain Picard didn't buy that line, and he wasn't assimilated. Well, he kind of was at one point, but he recovered. And maybe that's where we're at as a caucus system, is saying resistance is not futile. We will resist this.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to take it back, and we're going to have the best caucus system
Yeah.
ever. And next time when this fight presents itself, we'll actually fight instead of go right along with the narrative that we say we disagree with.
Uh-huh.
That's the part that has really frustrated me with the state GOP, is they say, "Oh, we're with you. We are with you 100%." It's like, what? In what capacity?
Yeah.
Because you didn't fight.
No. As
And-
long
and
as you
for
don't show up at our parks either. After.
Yeah.
There was a lot of stories there.
Yeah, and I think they're saying, but we all know resistance is futile, and you guys are resisting, and you're going to create problems for everybody.
Yeah.
Just get on the bandwagon, and let's all
Yeah.
forget about caucus and
Yeah.
I don't know. You can't say you support the caucus system if you haven't been fighting.
Exactly. So what would you recommend people do? Run for as delegates?
I think we've said this before too. Social media is God's gift to this generation, and we need to talk to each other. We need to keep that flame burning
Yeah.
for the caucus system. All of you out there, the caucus system works. It's a good system, and it's the right. It is the Republican form of government in action, and it goes back. Honestly, it's got biblical roots to it. Of selecting representatives at the local level with your neighborhoods. It's beautiful, and we cannot let people define it who clearly don't care about it and want it to go away.
So we use our precincts. And
Use our precincts and run.
Get elected.
Yeah.
Run as precinct chairs, and and we need good people in county leadership and in state leadership too.
Yeah, we need a revival.
Yeah, people
Let's
who
have a
are.
revival.
Yes, that's right. We need people who are going to fight for
Yeah.
election integrity and these other issues, and fight for the platform. We need to have, because right now the convention system is the best way to get candidates in there who follow the platform. The SB 54. I think it was one of the judges who said, with SB 54, you could have Bernie Sanders run as a Republican because there's no check on that. On their
Well,
platform.
I was talking to Brian King and said, you should just switch to a Republican. You'd be a shoo-in.
Yeah.
Just put an R by your name.
Right.
You could still be for abortion. I mean, you don't have to give up any of your. Just
Right.
in Utah,
Right.
isn't that the way it works?
Yeah, exactly.
Ah,
Keep making us like California.
I don't know, and that's really hard to overcome
Mm-hmm.
in the precinct and the caucus system, if you genuinely have people that are inclined. I mean, we saw this last year.
Mhm.
The who was the other Republican woman that was running for president?
And Nikki Haley.
Yeah, Nikki Haley. So you have all these people showing out, coming out saying, "Oh, let's make sure we all vote for Nikki Haley and
Yeah.
not Trump."
Uh-huh.
The anti-Trump movement. Well, most of those people were Democrats, and they were, coming and trying to take over. But in the precincts that were conservative,
Uh-huh.
they called it out. I guess
Right. Yeah.
called it out. Said we don't want this. We don't want you coming in and taking over our precincts. And there were some precincts that were overwhelmed by it, and
Yeah.
it kind of went the other direction, which.
It's a good we need community again. We need people, they always say like don't talk about politics and religion, but those are things that really matter. We need to learn how to have those conversations with people because that affects people's lives. So they're important topics.
There's a question here. Is there a plan to take the lieutenant governor out of overseeing elections? Yes, it was a great bill presented in 2023 by Ryan Wilcox to take elections away from the lieutenant governor and put them into a committee. Now, I don't know that that's the ideal plan, but it was a great plan. They decided, because the governor said, I'm all for that, just not until after the election.
Right.
So,
Right. He's
so,
out of control. Well,
surprise, surprise.
Right. And I have concerns with it too. I really am
Yeah.
uncomfortable with we have Utah we appoint everybody. Our governor appoints
Right.
everybody, judges,
Yeah.
and he wanted to appoint school board and treasurer and auditor and everything else. But I actually don't like that idea of a board to appoint a board that because did you see who's on the board? It'd be like the governor, the lieutenant governor, the speaker,
of the House,
president of the Senate, all the same players,
the same ones.
Yeah, so I actually don't think that's.
But I just thought it was ironic that
ironic.
there was like, oh, I think that would be great. Let's do it after the election.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so it just tells you exactly what you're.
Well, and you saw the appetite for election reform when you were there, when you were running bills.
Oh yeah. So we one of our platforms was day one we would demand that we switch to a Secretary of State,
right?
A separately elected office to
Uh-huh.
oversee the elections.
Right, and then one solution, which was part of the bills that you proposed, HB 371, was to have people vote in their precincts. So anything we can do to decentralize the elections. Right now, there's this effort to put it all in one place where it's so much easier to manipulate, but we need to decentralize it. Vote in your neighborhoods again and count those votes back there. And I think that's going to be one of the big solutions.
Let's see.
If the court case
stands, no one is allowed to view signatures.
what will happen to our election? So
Oh.
they're wondering if it doesn't. So so that third district court case when we tried to get Spencer Cox's signatures, and it was just a pretty outrageous motion to dismiss. So the question is if we're going to appeal that or let that stand. But I think that's something we definitely need to appeal.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too.
And I believe we have a very strong case on it.
Yeah, I do
We'll,
too.
we'll just tell the Court of Appeals, we'll say, why didn't you finish that code?
I did get, someone reached out to me today from the Public Interest Legal Foundation.
Oh, good.
I'd reached out to them a few months back and hadn't heard, but so one of the big challenges of appealing any of these things is money, and trying to come up.
Because how many cases do we have right now?
I don't know, and if you count the grandma requests that are going to turn into cases, we're probably
and they keep
7.
upping the bill on all our grandma requests too.
Yeah,
those are getting expensive.
Yeah, so the cost of fighting the system the way they have it set up is money,
right?
And we've paid out a lot. Probably will continue to do it, but yeah, if anybody wants to help bear the cost of those things or make contributions, we are very open to that. We still have our campaign account. We also have our legal account, the C4, the 501c4.
Can they do that? Is it still on our Lyman for Utah?
It is.
Okay,
yeah.
So go to Lyman, because I've had people ask me that too. LymanforUtah.com. You can go there and donate.
Right.
So that would be great because right, we use that.
And honestly, and we said this at the beginning too. We'll have all the money that we need. It's not about money. It's about the hearts and minds of the people. And there's a lot of people who really believe in this, and it's, I mean, honestly, it's phenomenal. It's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen is the willingness of people to donate to causes that they believe in.
Right.
And again, I read things online about how, you know, I'm living high on the hog off of the campaign contributions. Jody will tell you that we've sunk a huge amount of our own money into this, and you know, glad to do it. It is a mission for us, and so whatever the cost is, that's the cost. And
So when you say we'll have the money we need, it's because you have the faith that we'll have the money.
I have the
that we
faith.
need.
I have the faith. Thank you.
It's not because there's this big pot sitting there. It's because we know that it's. I feel like this is what we've been doing this whole time. You take one step into the darkness. You don't know what you're doing, and the light, then your way is lit up in front of you, and then you take another step, and I feel like that's been our whole campaign.
It has been.
And a lot of times I'm like, I'm not sure what tomorrow brings. I know everything I need to do today, and then tomorrow comes, I'm like, okay, now I know everything for tomorrow. Like I just feel like it's just been given to us one step at a time. But same thing with these financial things. We don't have the resources right now to be able to fight all of these battles at the same time. But we have confidence that we can be able to do that. But we really are grateful for people donating to this.
With the primary, you know, we were spending money, and we spent it all. It was, we always spend every dime, you know, whether it's on signs or advertising, whatever. And we had a pretty good sized donation that came in towards the end of it, and I thought a few times, it's like, oh man, if we'd have had that on the front, we probably would have done things a little bit differently. But the truth is, it may not have been necessarily better.
Yeah.
So I hate the stress of running lean, but I also kind of like the energy that comes from feeling that. And I guess if other people feel that too, and they want to donate, this is not a commercial to donate, but if people feel that and they want to donate, I want to make sure that they know that they can.
Yeah. And we're just going to keep fighting as much as we can.
Yeah.
So it's going to, legal costs are very expensive, and so it's going, because you filed this last one pro se, right?
Yeah.
Meaning you didn't hire an attorney to do it.
Right. No, I have some great help. I could not do it alone, and the printing costs on that were thousands of dollars,
right.
and someone stepped forward and helped with that. So it's pro se, but it's not free. And then the other costs, you know, when you've got a full on law firm fighting, that's
and if we do
tens of thousands.
For the one that was dismissed, for us to appeal that will be going to appellate level is very expensive too.
Right.
So
Don't do that pro se.
Yeah. So as we continue to go through these battles, the costs continue to grow.
Yeah.
Right, with the different costs, but anyway, we're very grateful for people who are in this fight with us through financial ways.
Yeah, and let's go find it.
Yeah,
this is the time. It really is the time. We've felt this from the beginning. There are big things that are going to happen, and big things have happened. I mean, I look back on this last year, and it's been an amazing year, and an amazing amount of discovery that's come out, and people feel differently in Utah than they did a year ago.
They do.
And it's not because we're lying to them. It's because we're telling them the truth, and they know it.
Right. So the state of Utah politics is much different now than it was a year ago.
Right.
So they're addressing. It is better. They're addressing these election issues that were they didn't taboo before, that they wouldn't even talk about, and so we're hopeful that there's some good things that come out of the session. But we're trying to watch these things carefully. You have to be careful because a lot of times, you know, you get problems with the elections, and the solution is not what you want. You know, they kind of, it's a bait and switch thing. So we hope to see some good things happen.
Well, we're kind of, you saw President Trump said that he wants to change the name of Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America.
Yeah.
I saw a thing from Glenn Beck that said, oh, he's a negotiator. That's what he does. I think he's very serious about changing the name to Gulf of America, because most of the oil and the resources go down to the Gulf of Mexico from the United States. And in all the language, Biden talks about the Gulf of Mexico and the restrictions. And a really great way to fix all that is saying, what is the Gulf of Mexico? It's the Gulf of America, and all those restrictions go away. And I guess for me, this whole idea of like a new day dawning and energy independence for America, for Utah, you know, taking our borders and securing our borders, doing all those things. It's so exciting to be part of that, and it's really exciting if you've been kind of fighting for that already for the last 4 years, at least some, or much longer. The idea of federalism and statehood and those things. We've got some great people who've put a lot into that. Those that shifted full bore to the Biden agenda, Spencer Cox, and did that for the last 4 years, and now think that you can shift full bore back and drill baby drill when you've been pushing DEI and all these other things. I guess you can do it, but it's seen as flip-flopping and disingenuous, and I'm
Right.
afraid that we've got plenty of that going on. But on the flip side, we've got people who really have worked so hard: public lands issues, energy issues, education issues in our classrooms, and it's an exciting time for those people.
Yeah, and I think because so much of it is being exposed, that is pushing them that direction. So they're having to, a lot of them they're changing policy to try to become more conservative. So we're happy to see that happen. It needs to be sincere and needs to stick and not just be a facade.
To that point, someone says, how do we stop Cox smart cities and digital IDs? Yeah. Okay, that's for 4 years we're all smart cities and digital IDs, and I was like, oh, smart cities bad, natural asset companies bad.
Well, do they exist, smart cities? Is that what Cox said at first? It's like they're not even real.
Yeah.
So they denied it at first, and now, I guess they didn't deny it first. At first he was promoting it, and then he denied it when he got called out on it.
Who knows?
Yeah, right.
So, how do we stop Cox's smart cities? I guess we maybe don't have Cox in
Right.
office.
Right. I mean, I think a lot of it is just, that would be the biggest win, but to keep talking with neighbors and let people know, because a lot of this stuff people have no idea what's going on.
So I'm jumping around, but I get these this way my brain works. But Greenland, this big trip to Greenland, and I heard it was Charlie Kirk or somebody else was like, who's going to control Greenland? Is it going to be Denmark or is it going to be the United States? And my first thought was, how about Greenland?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the idea of statehood and I think that's what Trump wants too, is for Greenland to be independent, an independent, entity, a nation of their own, separate from Denmark. But I guess that's who's going to stop Cox from doing smart cities. Hopefully every single person who lives in Utah that says, I'm not going to go along with that. Reject that idea.
Right.
And that's the part of government that that Spencer Cox and Gavin Newsom and these people it doesn't seem to register to them that they're not in charge of everybody.
Right.
They're public servants, and the people are in charge in this country. And if the people don't think that, then I guess they may as well not have the power. If they don't believe that they have the power, or if they're willing to have someone take care of them, I'd rather be safe than free, that type of attitude, then I guess they'll end up in a smart city eating bugs.
Right. Well, how important is it to talk to their representatives? Did you pay attention to those messages? If people reached out to their representatives about the smart cities or other things?
Yeah. I guess from that standpoint, I put a lot more weight in individuals who would come to talk to their representatives. The one thing, and it was you heard it so often, and I always smiled at it. These people would come, usually women, talking about their kids and some issue, and then they would always say, "I'm only a mom. I'm just a mom." To me, the Just a Moms group had so much more. I was so much more interested. Well, what are you seeing? What do you think? Than the lobbyists that were coming and saying, I'm just a lobbyist. I just
I'm just getting paid for
I
this.
just put $1,500 in your campaign account, hoping whatever. I'm just a lobbyist, and they have so much more access to all of the leadership. But I think your average legislator feels the same as I do. I think when an individual comes with a genuine problem, hey, I am trying to raise my cattle by Green River, and this is what DNR is doing to me. it's like, oh, let's figure out what's going on there. But
Because those people are personally affected by it. You know,
Yeah.
coming for sincere reasons. Well, I hope a lot of people heard that, because I think that's really inspiring for people to know that, or at least Phil cared about the people, the average person who went to go talk to the representative.
and I think representatives deserve I don't know, the respect of believing in them, that what you say to them is important to them.
It's good.
So if they prove you wrong, that's on them. But you shouldn't assume on the front end that they are not going to listen to you.
That's all part of this
Unless
representative.
it's Todd Weiler, you might just go ahead and assume that. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
But even Todd, I saw him do some things in justice reform that I thought that those were some important things that he did.
That's good.
So
That's good. Well,
I
good.
don't mean to say anything nice about this, but
he's been pretty mean online lately. There's a
but
couple of them.
yeah, put some faith in your representatives. I guess demand it. You should demand that
That's
your
good.
representatives listen to you.
And I want to add too, with this digital ID, my gut worries that down the road, you know, we saw some instability within the government. We saw Antifa riots. We've seen things like that happen. I worry if we see more of that happening, government solution will be like, let's do more of this lockdown, these other things. So I worry when those become the solution. You know, kind of keep your eyes open for these things that are proposed as a solution when they're going too far.
Right.
Like the Patriot Act, like that went too far in my opinion.
Well, schemers are always 10 steps ahead of people of goodwill. They're always way out in front of us, and we think, oh, that seems like a good deal. But that's why it doesn't matter who is proposing this.
Yes.
You know, if George Soros is proposing something, that's different than, you know, if someone with some integrity is proposing.
Right. Okay, so we did this one.
Do we know how many people are? Okay, so a few people on
Awesome.
It'll show
And we'll post these online so people can watch
Okay,
later and
yeah.
share them with friends.
I think Rumble.
Mhm.
That one's recorded, and we've got the mics hooked up to that. So if you can't hear it, go back and watch the Rumble video.
If you want a different angle.
If you want a different angle,
Yeah.
yeah.
So YouTube and Instagram and Rumble, right? But we're hopeful. Things are good, right? There's good things ahead. These court cases, we're still in the fight for it. So regardless of what happens tomorrow, right? We are. I guess one thing to say is that we're doing everything we can, and we're going down all the proper channels. So we've done the grammar request, we've done everything within the timeline, and now we're going through the court system. And we believe in America, and we'll see how things work out.
Yeah. We've seen great support.
Yeah.
And it's been fun. It's been fun seeing the kind of the groundswell of honest people wanting honest answers and honest politics, and I don't take any of that for granted or take it lightly. It's been a huge privilege to be part of it, and we have built an organization that's active, that's informed. I loved what somebody said. It's been a couple of months ago, but it's like, if I have an emergency, I'm not calling 911. I'm calling Phil Lyman.
That's awesome. I love that. I think there's a lot of people who would do that.
The media doesn't.
Yeah.
The media is doing a huge disservice, and it's our obligation to call them out on it. Hopefully that they would change and do better. And I think we're seeing a little bit of movement potentially there. So,
Yeah.
For me, it's always been about the fight. I'm not interested in any other, endeavor. I think I told you this when I first got into the county commission. I was fighting for the public lands stuff, and one of the outgoing commissioners said, "That's a fight you will never win. It's like David versus Goliath." And I said, "Well, two things. I'm not interested in any other fight. I'm not going to fight to give away my freedom.
Yeah.
And second of all, you should go read that story again."
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yes.
And I guess
It ends well for David.
Yeah, it ended well for David.
Yeah.
We talk about this all the time. Is there any good stories about where the good person actually wins? And
Yeah.
because often they don't. Often it's the fight, and but for me, the fight is the excitement. So
Right.
win or lose, the fight is worth fighting, and it's got great rewards that come.
And David knew he was on the right side, and he fought. It was unconventional the way that he fought. He didn't have the armor. He didn't have the resource. Well, he did have. He chose not to put the armor on like the other people use. But
yeah, I think I can't remember what the book is, but they point out that that was not a fair fight.
Yeah.
Goliath didn't stand a chance.
Right.
Because,
See, that's
and,
right.
and that's what David said. He said,
Yeah.
"I can take this guy.
God
I killed
inside.
bears and lions, and I know how to use a sling, and this guy's huge. I can hit him with a rock, you know,
Yeah.
and I can throw it really hard."
Yes.
And he had God on his side.
That's right.
You know,
He
and,
was doing the right thing.
and he did say, you come with all your insults, and I come in the name of the God of Israel, and it's pretty
Mhm.
powerful. So
Yeah. Well, it's great. Well, we believe in America and in justice and in fairness. And, with our fight, we've seen how hard people have pushed back against transparency. And to me, that's really concerning. And it's almost, with this whole, like even the signature packets, it's turned into this cover up is almost bigger than the fact that they kept it from us. So when you look at all the effort that's being kept to conceal information and dismiss information, motions to dismiss and all those things, it just kind of invigorates you. Like we need to keep pushing on this. There's something there that we've got to uncover, and we've got to do this for Utah. And we feel like we're at that point that we're put here for a reason, and we have this opportunity ahead of us. So we have to continue to stay in this.
our kids are watching.
Right.
They really are watching, and our grandkids, in our case.
Yeah, and
So-
it will affect their life. It affects them now and in the future.
Yeah.
So we don't know, just continue, like we're walking one foot in the dark, and we'll just keep doing that. And we know there's good things ahead.
So we've done a couple different formats here. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah,
by the
this
way,
is great.
just
Yeah.
talking with you. We did a debate. We did a couple of round tables. Had Aaron Davidson on. I thought that was great.
Yeah, the county clerk.
Yeah, the county clerk, Utah County. Talked about immigration up in Ogden.
Had Chris Harding with an auditor.
Yeah.
Do a debate.
Yeah, and I was thinking today, we're not really running for an office right now. It's not like we're campaigning. I'm no longer a legislator. I'm not exactly sure when the last day of that is, but I'm no longer a legislator. So then the question is, why would we do something like this?
Yeah.
And the answer for me is because we care genuinely about these issues, and we're not going away.
Right.
Whether we shift into like trying to affect the GOP itself with leadership, or running in 4 years, or people are asking all the time what we're going to do, and I say, well, we're not quitting.
Right.
So.
And I think we feel like this is a role that we need to play right now, and everybody else has their own role. And there's people who are, we've got these social media warriors out there who are doing really great things as far as social media goes, and people within their own school districts or their school boards or community. I think we all kind of feel that inside. What can we do to further freedom and justice and liberty? And we're liberty-minded people, and we just feel like this is a battle that we need to continue. We're put here at this time for a reason.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to do it, but we're with everybody else too, who they're all doing their own part too. Like we all have a role to play in this. It's an important time. It's an exciting time to be alive, and it's interesting how much is exposed out there, and how much we can do.
Yeah.
Make a difference.
Jody, is there anything else that you've got?
We've got some great people here.
Dude.
Yeah.
We do have great people here. Thank you.
People want to know how to draw national attention to the problem.
I mean, if you're following Phil, he's been getting some big national attention. He's been on some really big podcasts, so that's great, and we want to keep that happening.
Yeah,
Keep those platforms.
it is interesting. And I've felt from the very beginning that for us to be effective, we've got to get out of the Utah bubble, because they really do control. The media really controls the narrative in Utah. So trying to get out of that, and we have in a big way. We'd like to have done it in a bigger way, and I have been confused on a few people that wouldn't take this issue up, like Tucker Carlson or Steve Bannon. Not to like call them out or anything, but it's like, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
And
They talked about Utah other times, and they've been frustrated with clocks.
yeah,
before.
on the front end, it felt like we had some stuff going, and then it stopped. And I'm sure that was not organic. I'm sure that was somebody somewhere saying, we don't want this discussed
Hmm.
with Phil Lamb. We don't
So
want.
kind of moratorium against
Yeah,
this case. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
But
however
hopefully-
that works, I don't know, but
Yeah. Hopefully that's lifted. We could still address those issues and people take these on.
yeah.
Because it's important. Well, they've seen how, like, our race, how the Senate race affected the SB 54 affected our Senate race, and that's in turn affected Cox or Trump's ability to get some of his appointees in too.
Right.
So that has brought the attention back to Utah again, and the problems with SB 54.
Yeah.
So it is a big issue, but
Yeah, it is amazing. You go around the country and everybody knows Mitt Romney, and you know, and not in a good way. It's like, what is
No.
going on in Utah? How did Utah get Mitt Romney?
yeah, no, they're like,
It's like-
did you get you picked another one,
Yeah.
another Mitt Romney? Like, what's going on? When they saw Curtis stand up against some of these appointees
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Trump.
You just want, you just
Yeah.
want good, honest representation.
Right. Well, it's interesting. My brother, Sean, works in D.C. He's been back
Oh, that's
there for
right.
a while. Yeah, he's an attorney back there. But he said he's been back there during our whole race and everything. But he said that people have their eyes on Utah and they're paying attention to what's happening to Utah. So that's good. So we got people are watching closely. So
Well, I think Utah has a role to play nationally, and especially in the West. If you had a governor in Utah that honestly would stand up for public lands use and energy independence instead of just at election time, it would change. It would change Colorado. It would strengthen New Mexico, Nevada, Idaho, and
Right.
so
right, it's right.
it would change. It would change the West.
It would change the West. So that's still out there. I mean, that can happen. We could get. So what we're looking for is for the court to rule and say that we need to have a special election for governor. We need to have the will of the people be represented by having the right person on the ballot, and that happens all the time. That they have special elections. So that's what we're looking for. So we feel like it's a right fight to be in.
Yeah. I see Chad Iverson on there. Lyman lost. It's like, well, if I did,
Show it. Prove
yeah,
it.
prove it. That'd be
Yeah.
nice. I think Cox lost. Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, he did lose. Didn't even get 34 or didn't even get 40% at the convention. So that's the whole point.
Shout out Chad for keeping our comments. He's got a lot of engagement. So
Oh, thanks, Chad.
thank you,
Yeah,
Chad.
this helps the algorithms. And really, thanks everybody for tuning in. And I've never been one who wants to just hear positive things. I prefer disagreement more than agreement because I think you know where you stand if people are telling you things that if they're critical. That said, I'm not a fan of trolls. Essentially,
Right.
So, and there's lots of those in politics. Just amazing that they think that they're going to like scare people into a corner by being just vulgar, crude, awful people. But
Right.
It's more fun.
They make it more fun.
yeah,
Yeah. Keep it exciting. But yeah, but we've had incredible support though.
Yeah.
Too. Just lots of great people.
Well, is there anything else that we need to talk about before we go?
If you want to talk about UN stuff.
Oh, UN stuff.
That came up in a podcast you did the other day too.
The scary thing is that the UN has an agenda. So many of these bills that come through the legislature, you want to know, where did this come from? Why are we centralizing control of all of our water and then paying farmers not to farm and to turn all their water back into the Great Salt Lake and give millions and millions of dollars to the Sierra Club and the Nature Conservancy? And what you find is that those things are coming from a globalist platform, usually right in line with the United Nations. So the United Nations came out with this slogan: "You can't control what you can't measure." And Utah came out with the exact same slogan: "So you can't manage what you can't measure. We want to measure every drop of water in Utah, and the water belongs to the state." Well, prior to that, it was the water belongs to the state, meaning the people. This water belongs to the people. I love the words of the 10th Amendment, that these rights are reserved to the state or to the people. It doesn't mean one or the other. It means it's the same thing.
Right.
The state is the people and the water belongs to the people. And we flip that narrative. It's like, It's like the water doesn't belong to you, and it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the state, meaning the state engineer, meaning the governor, meaning the legislature. It's turned that whole thing on its head. That comes from the UN. I guarantee you that whole Marxist line of thinking comes from the United Nations.
Yeah. So they're not hiding their agenda. They're pretty just out there.
They're not hiding it. In fact, they come to Utah. The only other state in the nation that they meet outside of New York is Utah.
Wow. Crazy.
And we have this huge data center down here. There's stuff going on. Utah is not being duped into these things. We
Yeah.
are like leading the charge on so many of this really destructive stuff, whether it's elections or our schools.
Right. I mean, I studied
Crazy.
political science, and I'd see those things and like celebrate it, Model UN, and all these great things, and all these international law things. But then now I'm looking back at it and like, these are problems. These globalist ideas are really hurting us. I mean, they're unelected people, and they're bringing these policies to us. It's a
I
problem.
think what Trump kind of brings is the idea that, well, maybe we'll try something different for a while.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll try merit-based employment.
Yeah.
And
It's a
Elon Musk
great
and Vivek Ramaswamy, it's like the rebirth of merit. And it's like, no, I'm not going to treat you differently because of your sexual preference or
Right.
something. It's like, let's talk about going to work and doing a good job, and
Yeah, these things that have worked forever.
that's like opposite of the UN.
Right. That's right. Well, awesome. Yeah. But anything else? We're good. Good.
All right. Well, thank you again.
So we
for-
plan
for
to do another one
tuning in.
at some
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
right?
we'll definitely do this again. Thursday nights have been our default go-to, so we'll try to do something again.
Every few weeks.
I hope everyone had a great Christmas and took a little bit of a break from politics, or at least for a few hours,
Yeah. Right.
But we're certainly not taking a break, and we're right back at it. So
It's great. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for all your support, and we feel like we're right in here with you guys doing this.
I guess as far as the thing tomorrow, if there's an announcement, stay tuned on X and Instagram, and we'll blast it out as soon as we know something about it.
Yeah.
But you'll probably find out about the same time we do.
Yeah. That's great.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Thanks.
See ya. Thanks for your help.